Hello everyone! So as I mentioned last time, I wanted to do something a little more useful once in a while, and hopefully this thing that we are doing today is going to be useful to some of you. So let's get to it. Today I want to show you how to use the pen tool in Illustrator because that's what I'm using most of the time, and whenever I make some kind of tutorial I often kind of want to say just trace this with the pen tool, and I feel like I need to have something to refer to if people don't know how to use it. And I know that there is plenty of tutorials out there that you can find, and I'm sure there are some that are way better than whatever I'm going to make today. But anyway, I'm going to add one of my own, so that if in future tutorials I say trace this with the pen tool, I don't have to send you shopping around in Google finding other tutorials. I can say check this one out. Okay. As usual, I want to keep this brief and straight to the point, and I'm usually failing at it, but let's try and do that again. So let's transfer to the other screen, where I'll tell you a little bit more about the image that we'll be tracing today. Okay, so the images that we have today, all of them can be done without the pen tool. They're fairly geometric, so we can easily outline them using the rectangle or the ellipse tool or any of those things. But for the purposes of this video, we are going to use the pen tool. Let me know if you want to see an alternative tutorial where when I trace those images without the pen tool for a more sharp and geometric look. This would be definitely an easier way. It's just going to give us a different feeling and expression in the end. So let me show you. Here I already have the image that we're going to use. I drew it on paper as I usually do, and I took a picture and I placed it in a document in Illustrator. In case you want to know, the dimensions are 1080 by 1080 is what I'm using for Instagram, but they can be whatever. In this case, we are not making this for a particular purpose. Well, I'm going to use this for a project, but you know, it's Illustrator, everything is pretty flexible, so it doesn't really matter that much. So all we have is a bunch of stamps, and as I said, I want to keep this digestible size, so we are not going to go through all of those images together. I'm thinking we are going to do the blueberry stamp together, because I think it has a nice mixture of sharp and round objects, also closed shapes and open shapes, so I can show you all of that, but basically everything else would be made the exact same way. I could have chosen to go with something even more simple, just random shapes, but I thought it would be a little more interesting for me and for you if we have a particular image that we are working towards. When I started doing this, I was doing it with just random scribbles at first, and yeah, I just thought it was a little boring. Again, before we start, I'm sorry that I keep throwing something and delaying the start. I'm going to put in the description or in a comment or something a timestamp where you can go directly if you want to start with the tutorial. But what I wanted to say is, because I mentioned that we don't need to do this with the pen tool, we can do it with a rectangular, whatever geometric shape tool. So why are we choosing the pen tool? Well, for once I'm making a tutorial about pen tool, so it makes sense to use the pen tool. But the second reason is that I will choose one or the other depending on the project I have and depending on the final look I want to achieve. So if I'm making something for example, an app or a website or something a little more technical looking, I guess, I will probably opt for the sharper, more geometric look. But if I want something a little more illustrative and more decorative and more something that has a little more handmade feel to it, if the final project requires something with a little more unique handmade qualities, I would go for the pen tool, because while you can achieve sharp geometric shapes with the pen tool, you can get the exact same look that you would with the more geometric tools. What I'll be going for is basically tracing directly my sketch So the final result is going to look like a hand-drawn sketch. And this is something I've always enjoyed and tried to get into my work, because I love Illustrator and I love vector graphics. I love the sharpness and the flexibility of it, but I also like texture and handmade stuff and wonky, a little bit imperfect illustrations. I also like the perfect and geometric ones, but I feel the imperfect ones have a little bit more personality that appeals to me, so it's my go-to. So wait, I lost my train of thought. So yeah, basically, when I make a sketch on paper and trace that directly with the pen tool, I get the same handmade look that I would with the paper sketch. And there is another way to do that with the live trace tool, which I absolutely hate, and I don't even want to talk about it because I think it's awful. Briefly, why I hate it is that it gives a lot of weird artifacts. It gives a ton of anchor points, which slows down your computer, and with some of the techniques I use, you still get that, but in a bit more, in a way that I feel it's more worth it. And using the live trace tool is probably faster, but I don't like the final results, and I don't think it's that professional in my view. So I would personally avoid it. And when someone, like a client, gives me a file that someone made with the live trace tool and I have to afterwards work with it, it's just awful. It's so time consuming, it gives so many problems, and anyway, that's a whole other discussion that we don't need to have right now. So let's get into the tracing, shall we? Okay. So here we have this blueberry stump that we're going to trace. What I was talking about earlier, okay, this is the stroke color here, and I'm going to change it to something bright so I can see where I am. I also would like to change this color here to something different, like this, so that I can basically see where this shape is. We can easily change all of that later, so don't worry about it. So what I was talking about earlier is that we can use this sketch underneath as guidance. By the way, how to get this down there. Basically what I did is just open the folder where I have this picture, this image, and I dragged and dropped it in my Illustrator file. I put it on a layer that I locked, and I'm working on another layer, and that's all the layers we need for this project. I've seen people use Illustrator kind of how you would use Photoshop, giving every shape a layer. This is not necessary because every shape sort of acts as its own sub-layer. If we go under here, you can see, so we only need 2 layers for these projects. For a lot of projects, most of the time I would just use 2, and if I'm creating an image directly without a sketch underneath, then I'll just use 1 layer. So as I mentioned earlier, we can use this tool, this one and this one, to trace this image, and then we'll get this nice sharp crisp corners, you know, like this. So let me know if you want to see that. But today we are not doing that. Okay, let's grab the pen tool. We can press P on the keyboard or come up here. I have to click the right mouse button to get this drop down. By the way, I'm using the mouse. As I've mentioned in a previous tutorial, I make most of my illustration with the mouse. Well, basically all of my illustrations, I just use the tablet for a few final touches, and sometimes not even that, so you don't need to have a tablet to follow this tutorial. So we're grabbing this basic pen tool, and where should we start? Let's start with something simple like this square. So what we can do is, oh my god, this is going to be a huge video. Let me explain a few basic things. I'm assuming here that you don't know absolutely anything, so for some that might be a bit too much, for some it might be just enough. I don't know. When we click with the mouse, we create an anchor point. This here is an anchor point, as it says you know, when you hover over it. And this anchor point kind of serves a bit like a pin on a board. And when you move away from it, you see this connecting line that is a bit of a guide to show you where you are, what shape you're going to create if you place another point at whatever place. So this connecting line sort of works a bit as some kind of thread, those pins that we put on a board. And we can have a line sort of like this, and if that's all we need, we can hold down Control, or I think it's Command on Mac, and click somewhere else, and then we just have this line, or whatever, it can be whatever kind of shape. We can also press the V and go to the selection tool that also kind of releases this path that we're working on. We click away, and then it's just a lonely path. And sometimes we need a path, like for example here where we come to this part, that's what we're going to use for these lines on the leaf. Sometimes, most of the time, we would want to have a shape, a closed shape, which we achieve by going back to that first anchor point, clicking on top of it to close it. When we are in the right place, we are going to get this little circle by the pen tool icon. So that's how we know that the shape is going to be closed. Sometimes we are standing very close and we think we are in the right place, but we are not, and we are not seeing this circle. So if I click here, this path is not closed. We're still keeping this thread going. So make sure to have the little circle, and then you know that your shape is closed. And this shape, we can change the color of the outline, we can give it a feel, and all kinds of other great things. But we don't need it right now. So let's go back to our stamp. One way to do it is, if we want the more geometric look, where we are going to get sharp corners, basically the same look as we would with the rectangle tool, we can just place an anchor point in the corners. So if you want this line here to be absolutely straight, you can hold down Shift and click wherever you want it to end, and it's absolutely straight. If you don't want it to be straight, you don't hold anything. We're going to remove this fill because we need to see what we are tracing. Hold down straight, don't hold it, and it's not straight. But this is not what I want. I want to be following my sketch fairly closely. So to do that, I'm going to start in this corner, and I want my corners to be slightly rounded, but I don't want to do it so that they're perfectly rounded. I just want them to be kind of naturally rounded, the way they would be if I'm drawing this by hand, how it is right here. So what I'm doing is I place the point and I drag a tiny little bit, and I get this hand coming out of the anchor point, and they basically show the amount of curve that I'm going to get. Here I want a very small curve, which is why I have these hands be very small. In today's version of Illustrator, it's great to have this little rope thing that shows me basically what the expected shape is going to be like. That didn't used to be there, so it was a bit more of a shot in the dark what we were doing, but now it's very predictable. So I'm gonna, since here the curve sort of changes, I'm going to go down here and press and hold and extend this a little bit more, so you can see that this is following my sketch. And again, this is if you want to achieve this sort of hand-drawn style. And you can do that also using the brush tool. But what that won't give you is that, at least in my experience, I think when you use the brush, you don't really close your shapes, so they remain open, which is kind of not good. It can give you problems later on. And the brush tool creates a whole lot of anchor points, and we would like to, if possible, get as little anchor points as possible. The reason why we want as few anchor points as possible is because the program spends resources trying to calculate where these points are and how everything is in relation to everything else. And the more you have of those, the heavier it gets and the slower your program is going to get. And with that, your experience with the program is going to be not great. So this approach that I have, where I'm trying to achieve a hand-drawn look, will give you more anchor points than the more geometric one. So it's a bit of a trade-off, it's a bit of a compromise, but still using the pen tool, I have a lot more control over my anchor points. So let me show you if I grab my tablet pen and, well, I guess we'll have to abandon this now. I grab my brush with the B. So, you know, we can sort of trace this with the brush and everything looks fine, but when we grab the, you know, when you press a, what is that called? Direct selection tool and select it, we're going to see all the anchor points. And for this side of this rectangle, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. While if I do it with the pen tool, I'm going to have 3 at most. And 2 more anchor points are not that bad, but they add up over time. So also the other thing I was saying is that if you use the brush and you're tracing this closed shape, for example, like this, it looks like it's a closed shape to you. If you give it a feel, it's going to react like a closed shape, but in fact it is not. Here you can see that it's open, and that can in some cases give you problems, and it's not something you want. Also, you would notice again all these anchor points that we don't really need. We can achieve this shape with a lot less anchor points. If you want to do it this way, you can do it this way. There are not really right and wrong ways, but I believe there are better ways, and this is not the better way. It could be an easier way though. For me, the final quality of the product is important, so I wouldn't choose necessarily the easier way. So let's delete all that and go back to our pen tool. And yeah, I realize this is going to be longer than I anticipated, but I feel like it's important to explain all these things. So there are probably shorter tutorials out there. You should probably watch multiple ones and see what suits you the best. So back to the pen tool. We started this line here. Actually, I will go here and make that a little brighter because I don't really see it that well with this cover, like this. I like to have a good amount of contrast between the sketch and my tracing so that I know what is going on. So P for pen tool, and I'm going to hover over this anchor point. I see this little stroke beneath the pen tool, and that tells me that I'm directly over it, and if I click and drag, I'm connecting to the same path that I was working on before, and I can continue with it. I'm gonna go down here, hold and drag a little bit, have these little hands, give it a little bit of an angle, and then it's almost straight, but let's give it a little bit of a curve in here, like this. And over time, you're gonna get a feeling on where you need to place your anchor points and how much in which direction curve you have. You can basically see that when you move around, you get these different results. So this is going to guide you on where you are and where you need to be. You can get a feel for it. Okay, let's not make too many. So I would like to go back and do a little bit of adjustments. So to do that, I grab the direct selection tool, which is A on your keyboard. Also, you can find it up here. So with this, I can grab and move these points around and adjust them however I like. I can drag these hands to sort of give it a bit of a, bring it closer to the appearance I want. if we remove the sketch underneath, you will see that this is a very wonky rectangle. It's not as pretty as it would be if we drew it this way. But again, as I said, it's just a different expression. Sometimes your design is going to require something like this. Sometimes it's going to be something like this. And it's good to be able to do both of those things. Again, if you want to achieve this without the rectangle tool for some reason, because this is the easiest way to do it, so I would recommend doing it with the rectangle tool. But if you would like to do it with the pen tool, you just, hold down Shift to make sure you have 90-degree angles. And also this is another great thing that if you go to view, you make sure that you have smart guides turned on. Actually, I don't want this snap to pixel in this case, so get that off. But yeah, when you have the smart the smart guides turned on, you get all this, the little magenta lines that kind of shows you that you're aligned to some other object. Like in this case, it shows me that if I place my anchor point here, I'm connecting directly at 90 degrees with the point at the top, which is what I want. So I'm going to place it here and connect it, and perfect rectangle. Okay, let's go back to our tracing. So we made this wonky, beautiful in its ugliness and imperfection rectangle. Let's do the same with this rounded shapes of those blueberries. You can make a perfect circle with the ellipse tool. You hold down Shift, that gives you a perfect circle. If you don't hold down Shift, you're going to get an ellipse. You can shape it however you like. You can then grab your selection tool and adjust it to your shape. And there it is, it's perfect, it's amazing. If that's what you want, if that suits your idea, you go with that. We are going to trace it manually with the pen tool, and we're going to make it wonky and imperfect. So let's start here. We place the anchor point and we drag. By the way, we drag those hands whenever we want to get some kind of roundness. If we want a sharp corner, we just place down the anchor point and continue. But whenever we want smooth, round edges, would they be called edges? I don't know. When we want roundness and smoothness, we need to get those hands out. So we're gonna go down here, and again we place and drag. And normally the ellipse tool is going to give you 4 anchor points, but this we can actually achieve with only 3. And you don't have to make yourself crazy over the amount of anchor points you have. I'm just pointing it out because we spoke previously about it, but you don't have to worry about this too much. So I want to actually edit this shape a little bit, which is why I'm going into my direct selection tool to adjust this a little bit more to my sketch. Yeah, I'm liking this. So down here, for the sake of brevity, from now on, I'm not going to explain to you each and every alternative way to do it. Again, if you're interested in seeing this same image traced in a more clean geometric way, let me know and I'm going to make this alternative tutorial, because this one is going to get way too long if I keep explaining both approaches. So now we are making this shape. Okay, let's now work on this shape. It's interesting because it has both rounded shapes or rounded parts of the path and sharper corners. So with these sharper corners, we can do the same we did here, where we gave them a little bit of roundness. But because I want to also show you how to work with sharper corners, let's make those sharp. So I click and put an anchor point there. Then I go here and I round it. And then again, I click and don't extend those hands at all. And then I round it. Okay, here I'm gonna round it a little bit. Okay, here I want to give this a little fuller roundness, so I'm going to do this. And then if I click on top of this point, I'm going to go back to, and then I'm gonna round this one and come down here and close it. If I want to go back and edit any of the points I've already made, I can use any of those tools, but let's see if they come up naturally later. If not, I'm gonna go back and talk about that. For now, let's move on to this shape. Nothing new in here. I'm going to start here where you can't actually see the shape, because this one is going to go behind these two, so you won't be able to see this part at all, and I'm going to hide my point behind there. You don't really see the points anyway, but we can allow ourselves to make this side a little uglier. Here I'm going to give this a little bit of softness, like this. And you can tilt those handles actually, it's what they're called, those handles in the direction you want your path to go later, like this, and finish the shape. Like this. I'm going to adjust it just a little bit. Here what I will do is I'm going to make this a circle, then I'm going to work on this shape on top. The circle is going to be on the back, so this side here isn't going to be visible. So now if I close it like that, I'm going to have this really awkward shape, which doesn't really matter because it's behind this other shape anyway, but I don't like it, so I'm going to go back and grab this handle again and shorten it so I have a little more of a rounded circly shape. It's too sharp for my liking, so I'm going to adjust it a little bit so you can move the points around, move the handles a little bit until it gives you the desired shape. I think I'm liking this. And now let's do this shape on top. Again, I'm going for a little bit of roundness because that just works better with the technique that I'm going to use later on, but you can totally make this sharp. I just like them when they're rounded. This is a bit more squarey than I would like, which is why I will adjust it. Something like that. And then we have this sort of shape inside, which we can have it be just a path. Like this, for example, but I prefer to have it as a closed shape, so let's just close it like this. Okay, let's look into this frame. Actually, we don't need to do something much more different than we already did with this shape. And it can be your choice here whether you want these corners to be sharp or soft. I would like them to be a little bit soft. So I'm going to give tiny little handles. So one way to do it is to just go directly up here and drag this way, and then shorten this one handle, and then go this way, and that's gonna work. Another way to do it is place a point down here and then up here. That's going to give us more points, but it's not too bad. Again, there is a way, actually I can think of two ways to do this perfectly geometric with all the little valleys being exactly the same size, but we're not going to do that right now. And there we go. That wasn't so bad. Now let's trace this handle. Nothing too tricky here either. It's basically the same things over and over. So here we have this wide curve, which means that we need to extend those handles a bit longer, like this. And here, if we go this way, you see that this side moved and create a nice little bend, so that we covered this side exactly. And then it's not following the sketch perfectly, but in this case I actually want it to be this way. And then we come down here and we finish the shape. And this side here doesn't matter because it goes behind these two other shapes, so no one is going to see this. So no need to stress too much about the parts that no one will see. Same here with the leaves. This side no one is going to see, and I like to start here behind and predict where my shape is going to go. It's going to go this way. In this case, this handle isn't long enough to cover this entire shape when I go down here and place a point here, but if I make it too long, then it's going to bend too abruptly when I place my point in this, on this top of the leaf here. But when I place my point here, I can extend it from this side, and I can see now that this could have been a little bit wider, and I'm going to go back and fix that. But before that, I'm going to continue and finish the whole shape and then adjust it later. So here I can't continue with this because this handle here affects my line going forward, and it doesn't look how I want it to look, which means I need to adjust this handle a little bit. So I come on top of the point, click and drag and shorten it like this. So it's now a lot closer to what I want. Here we have a bend that's happening. There is a change of direction, which means it's a good place to put an anchor point right here. And I'm going to go this way so that it covers this bend. Again, here, this is, actually it is fine. I can go like this. Yeah, it'll take a little bit of adjustment. You probably don't need to go back and adjust quite as much, but I like to have things a certain way, so I do it. And now for this line here, I don't need that to be a closed shape. This is just going to be a stroke, and I'm going to start it from the top here, like this. And then I just hold down Control or Command and I click and I'm free from it. Same thing with these secondary ones. Alright, great. Let's do this sleeve. Again, I'm gonna start behind here, using this handle to predict the curve. I'm going to place it like this. And to know exactly where you need to place an anchor point, I think it basically takes experience, or it did for me. There are some clear rules, so to say, where you would need one, like places where the line changes abruptly, like corners, like places where the curve sort of has this S shape. So on the place where the direction changes, you would need an anchor point. But yeah, you just get used to that over time. And in any case, you can always go back and edit your shapes like this. Yes, and we are almost done with this. I don't think there's anything too new or tricky on this text. We can just use the text tool or the type tool and some font, but I want to keep the illustrative hand-drawn feel, so I'm just going to trace this. I'm going to leave that as a solid shape. Another way we can use the pen tool, though I think it's a bit slower and I wouldn't recommend it because you aren't training your feeling of where to put the anchor points, and yeah, it's a bit sloppy, but let's look at it. You can just place some anchor points in the corners that define the shape, like this, and then you can go in and edit those. So to edit this, we're going to get the anchor point tool, and what this does is allows you to bring out those handles so you can adjust the curve, and this way you don't have to predict curve up front, you can just see where it goes. Another adjustment tool is the direct selection tool, which helps you move points. What else is in here? There is the add anchor point. So if there is a place where we want to have a little more precision, we can add an anchor point. So this is not a place like that, so this isn't going to add much, but maybe we want it to go this way, for example. But we don't, which is why we're going to get the delete anchor point tool and delete it. What else is here? Curvature tool. I must be honest with you and tell you that I don't think I've ever used this. I have no idea. Curvature, oh okay, so it basically curves things. I'm not really sure what this is and why we need it. I never used this. I don't know what to tell you about it. So that's the regular pen tool. Group selection tool, I'm also not entirely clear on what that does. I guess maybe, okay. Anyway, not too important. And it might be, I just don't know what to tell you about it. I'm using the pen tool, occasionally the delete and add, but rarely. This one I use fair bit. The anchor point tool and the direct selection tool, I would say that's all you need, but I might be wrong. And we're basically done with this image. Okay, and now let's kind of give this a little more finished look. At this point I don't need my sketch anymore, so I'm going to give these shapes a fill so that we can see how they stack on top of each other and they don't look transparent like they do right now. So here we have all shapes that need to be filled. So I'm going to, by the way, we have right selection tool. Yes, you can go there by just hitting the V or manually going up there and taking it. So if we select like this, all the shapes that fell under this rectangle that we drew, they get selected, and we can go here and give them a white. So why did some things disappear in here? Well, it's because this shape that is now filled happened to be on top of these other shapes underneath, and it's hiding them. So all these parts, they're here sort of as their own separate semi-layers. They're not gone, they're just down here. So this shows us that this is the part that is currently selected. And this is what's underneath. For us, this shape actually can go all the way on the back here, so we can just drag it like this. Or we can hit Control Shift left square bracket on the keyboard and send it all the way to the back. Now let's select these ones. And right now we need to select only shapes that are completed, so they're closed. We are not selecting these lines. We give this a white fill, and now we need to do a bit of tidying up. So this leaf needs to go to the back. So I'm going to select it. Again, Control Shift left square bracket, and now I send it all the way to the back. But that means that it is now under this frame, so it sort of disappeared. We need to bring it one step up so it's over this frame and we can see it. We do that with Control right square bracket. Still not showing, so we do that again and it's there. So basically, if you use Control Shift left square bracket, you send things all the way to the bottom. If you use Control Shift right square bracket, you send things all the way to the top. If you use Control left square bracket, you send them one step under. If you use Control right square bracket, it's very confusing to say, Control and right square bracket, it sends them one step to the top. So you basically have to remember this, but once you do, it goes very fast. So here we have some more things to rearrange. I'm gonna get closer. All these things, all these lines that are on top and need to go on the bottom or beneath this shape, I'm selecting and Control left square bracket once, twice. I keep hitting it until they start disappearing. Yep, it's all arranged now. This one also needs to go back, so I think a quicker way to do it will be Control Shift left square bracket all the way to the bottom, and then 1-2 steps forward with the Control and right square bracket. Okay. This leaf also needs to go back like this. And the last thing we need to do is this blueberry is going to go all the way on top of everything. Control Shift right square bracket. And everything is nicely arranged. I'm going to play a little bit with this text, make it a little bit more yeah, that's fine. And here we have it. Actually, this whole image I would like to take a little bit to the top, so I'm going to, the quickest way would be to select it together like that, but I don't need the frame to be selected as well. So once I've selected all of this, now I'm going to hold down Shift and select again just these parts that I actually don't want them to be selected, so that will exclude them, and now I have all the things that I actually want selected in my selection, and I'm going to move them a little bit to the top. This is a simple shape and it won't give us too much problems in the future, but to make future editing easier, we can Ctrl G as all this is selected. So now we made the group. So now when we click on this, it's all selected together, and if we want to work inside of this group, we double click and now we are in this group and we can't affect anything else. So that's handy to do. And I think that's where I'm going to stop today, because that's all of the pen tool part of this tutorial. So what we have right now, to me, is just the first step of my illustration, is the outlining. You can call it the inking, if you will. And that's most definitely not where I would leave my illustration, but it's the most important step. It's the skeleton of the whole illustration. And to keep this brief, if at all possible, I want to stop with this here today, but I still want to finish this illustration together with you to show you a little bit about how I choose my colors and how I achieve my hand-drawn pencil textury look that I personally love, and that took me years and years to experiment and figure out. I'm going to show you that next time, because I want to keep this video focused on the pen tool, and I hope this was helpful. I have no idea if it was, because I have no real life connection with you and I cannot see if you understand or don't understand something. So please let me know in the comments if you have any questions, if I was going too fast or too slow, if you need to see more of anything, if you want me to show you the same illustration done in a simpler, more geometric way, if you want to see alternative ways of doing what I showed you, whatever it is, let me know and I'll look into it. And yeah, also let me know if it was helpful at all. I really hope it was, because I really want to give you something a little more useful. So that is everything for today. I will see you next time when we are going to finish this illustration, and until then, have fun using pen tool.